Your father, what was his full name?
Harry Nathaniel Wiley III.
Okay.
And I'm Harry Nathaniel Wiley IV.
How did your dad get into boxing?
He got into boxing by way of his little sister. One day, he'd been a tough kid in New York, brought up on the streets of Harlem and so forth. So he got in fights, he was in gangs and so forth like that. But he never thought of boxing in his head of actually becoming a boxer. Excuse me. Till they moved to a place, my grandfather moved them to a place called Montclair, New Jersey. I wish I could give you the date. I just can't right now, but we're doing some research about that. My researcher, Buddy Gibbs. So, moving there, he had a little sister. And what happened with the sister was, he was home one day and she came home and said, Harry, she was just learning how to roller skate. And the boys knocked her down on the corner. And he went down there to address these boys. My father was the oldest. He went down there to address this, and he went down there and cleaned their clocks. There were about 4 boys, and he beat the living snot out of all of them. And he took his sister home and bandaged her up. And somebody who knew my grandfather came to him and said, did you see what your son did? He said, what? Bo, about that thing down on the corner? He said, yeah. He can fight and handle himself pretty good. My grandfather said, well, that was his sister. He kind of was ticked off about it. I told him I don't want him fighting. And the guy said, well, you should have seen him. He was throwing fists. Well, my grandfather said, yeah, okay, well, I'm not proud of that, but okay. He said he stood up for his little sister, and that's what I wanted him to do. Then that guy went and told two gentlemen who were very, very good amateur boxers, semi-pro. There's this kid named Wiley that lives down on New Street. Man, this kid can throw. If he learned how to box, somebody taught him, So this gets back to my dad. I can't think of these 2 guys' name right now. They'll come to me. They go get my father, and they said, listen, kid, we're not going to hurt you. We just want to see how good you are. We just want to see. And these guys were known to be some of the best in the area. And they were known to be great. They were good boxers. They were knocking people. They were just almost semi-pro. They put him in the ring with both of these guys at different times. And the report was, for a guy that didn't know nothing about boxing, he held his own. He went right at them. He went right at these guys who were semi-pro. He went right at them and held his own. He got a bloody nose, cut eye, but he didn't know. He didn't know. He just went right at him. And everybody's going, this kid got heart. He don't know that we could have beat the hell out of him, But he came at us like he didn't give a shit, So it gets around, and they start talking to him about, why don't you become a boxer? Why don't you, come on, we'll train you. We love. So that's where it started. He started boxing then, and he went back and forth. New York, Montclair, New York, Montclair. And he was boxing and not doing bad. And then he turned pro. I can't give you the years. I think my friend Buddy, my researcher, came up with a number. He looked up his record. He was trying to find his record. I think he had 28 fights, 24 wins.
Your father?
Yeah. And what happened was, to stay in shape, he used to, back then, they didn't have these things, these refrigerators. They had ice box. Where you get that old term ice box?
Yeah.
Well, it was really an ice box. It was what you had your food at the bottom, and you stuck a big block of ice that you could buy in there to keep your food warm. And it was all lined with lead, and they didn't know lead was bad for you. You line it with lead, and you put your thing in there. You can buy a dime piece of ice, a nickel piece. Usually rich people could buy a 50-cent piece. That was a lot of money. And my father would deliver it, and that would keep him in shape. Because if you lived on the 5th floor, 6th floor, and it's 90 degrees out, you got to take a 50-pound, 30-pound piece of ice. They had tongs like this that were hooked on both ends. And you clamp them together, and you squeeze. And you take that thing and put it on your back, and you go up 5 flights of stairs. That's how he stayed in shape. And he was in shape. Stories he used to tell me. And the picture I seen, I showed him, I think I sent you that picture with him and Kid Chocolate.
Yeah.
That was him in a white suit next to him.
Okay.
And one day, he was delivering ice. I'm not sure on whether it was a horse carriage he was driving or it was a motorized vehicle. But what happened was a cab must have either scared the horse or brushed and hit the vehicle while he was in the back pulling ice, pulling out, your nickel's worth or your dime's worth of ice. It jarred the vehicle, and the vehicle rolled back and hit his leg and broke his leg. Now, being the time that it was, being colored, he couldn't get no good doctor. So they said it, but if they said it wrong or they said it something, and my grandfather said, and my father loved my grandfather. My grandfather said, "Why, son, this boxing thing's over. I'm not letting you get in that ring and get beat up because you can't move." My father said, "But my father was just broken hearted because he had fell in love with boxing." So he couldn't figure out what to do. But he kept going to the gyms. And as he went to the gyms, he noticed that when he was in boxing, he used to tape his own hands. And everybody used to say, "Man, you tape hands pretty good." And my father didn't think nothing of it. But then he started taping people's hands, especially fighters who hurt their hands. That's what he specialized in. Or have what they call sore hands. Because you get fighters that you accumulate that over time. And he'd tape their hands, and he'd pay a nickel a job. That was a lot of money back then. Like I told you before, you could get 2 hot dogs and a big thing of root beer for that, or 2 loaves of bread and some meat. That was a lot of money back then. He would do this, and he started taping people's hands. Now I'm going to mention some people's names you probably don't know. People like Joe Gillette, Harry Wills. These are great fighters. They started to hear about Wiley because all great fighters, even I remember Ali had problems with his hands. He had arthritis in his right hand. They all have problems. Hands become problematic because you keep hitting people with them. So he started to get a clientele of people, famous people, Joe Gillette, Wills, Harry Wills, Joe Gans, even the great Sam Langford at the end of his career. call him. My father was great friends with Sam Langford. That's probably maybe the greatest fighter that ever lived that we don't know. You don't know about. And my father taped his hands, and they all loved my father for just this hand taping thing. And he got around and started doing that. And then he got a call from Jack Dempsey. We all know who Jack Dempsey is. And they wanted him to come in. I don't know, I can't remember whether Pop said Jack was champion. So I think this might have been before Jack was champion. It might have been, I'm not sure. He went in there, taped Jack's hands. Jack's famous trainer, Mr. DeForest, God said, "You kid, you're good. I've been taping hands for like 40 years, and you're good. You're good at this. Thank you, Mr. DeForest," he told him. And he stayed with Jack, and then he became Jack's water boy, which is that's a big deal. Jack was knocking out everybody, and I think he might have been on the way to the title at that time. So he was Jack's water boy, and he stayed, and he listened, and he learned. And one of the first people he learned under was Mr. DeForest, who is they're trying to get him into the Hall of Fame too. Wizard. This is a wizard of boxing. You know, he was a very smart man. Pop stayed with him for a while. Then I guess he got, busy with other client people. He was busy taping hands all over the place. And then he started to have boxers of his own. After that, boxers was knocking people out. They was beating the snot out of people. So this gets to, excuse me, 1 second. This gets to somebody in what is called the AAU. I don't know if it still exists, the Amateur Athletic Union. Wiley, would you like to come and train young men like you're doing now? But you train them from all different weights, all different sizes, all different colors and everything. Oh, father looked at this. Sure, I'd love to do this. I'd love to do this. So he goes with the AAU, and he has phenomenal success. The first year he's there, most of his team wins most of the titles, whatever. Like if you're a middleweight, you win your division, you win your title. And he won. They did really well. So they invited him back a second time. I don't know if it was the second or third time he broke the record. What I mean by he broke the record, never before in the AAU. I don't know about since then. I'm not sure. We're trying to find out what year it was. But at one time, every one of Harry Wiley's fighters on that AAU team won the title. That was unheard of. That was from flyweight or lightweight up to heavyweight. Whatever weight class you represented, you won the belt for that year. Never had been done before. And everybody went, what? Who is this guy? And right about then is when the United States started calling.